Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our panel session on one of my absolute favorite topics in customer success, the EBR. My name is Kate Peter, and I'm going to be the moderator of this session today. I'm the Director of Enterprise Customer Success, which is fitting considering our enterprise theme today. And as you can probably imagine, that means I have a lot of thoughts and feelings on the topic at hand today. I'm sure if you ask my team, they'd tell you I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about everything, but specifically this one. I mean, honestly, I am totally geeking out at the opportunity to pick the brain of our very esteemed panelists who are the absolute celebrities of the customer success world. And I feel very honored to introduce each of them today. With us, we have Erin Siemens, Chief Customer Officer at Anaplan, Jenny Dede, Head of Global Customer Success at LinkedIn Talent Solutions, and John Sabino, Chief Customer Officer at VMware. All right, so like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna geek out today a little bit on the art of the executive business review. And I wanna make sure for all of you listening today that you leave with some tips and tricks, some thoughts on how maybe you can revamp or rework your own business reviews, and then hopefully prove to you that the executive business review is not actually dead, like the title of this, session today. Okay, but in true Gainsight fashion, we can't start without an icebreaker, right? So I'd love if each of you could briefly introduce yourself, your company, and where you're located, of course, but also answer the question that Nick asked earlier today during the keynote, which is, what has been the most surprising thing about going back to in-person events? Erin, I'll kick it over to you first, if that works.
Thanks, Kate. I'm excited to be here. As you mentioned, Erin Siemens, Chief Customer Officer at Anaplan. Anaplan is an extremely powerful platform that allows enterprises to connect their data across all lines of business to drive planning, better decisions, and the ability to pivot in times of uncertainty. I think maybe for myself, one of the most surprising things about going back to in-person events, I've only been to a few over the last year. One, sadly, I have become so dependent on the little names floating down in the lower left-hand corner of our video screen. So I'm going to have to really get my name recall back. But also, I am just nowhere near. My endurance has just gone so backwards. I used to be able to karaoke and get pizza till 1 o'clock in the morning, and now I'm in bed by 9:30. It's so sad.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I love it. I feel the same exact way. Endurance is totally shot. John, kick it over to you.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here with everybody. And my name is John Sabino. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at VMware. And we are enabling all of our hundreds of thousands of customers to get ready to move to their hybrid cloud journey, next generation app architecture, as well as securing all of their infrastructure and endpoints. So it's been an outstanding journey with the company. We have about 7,000 folks that are in our CXS, or our customer success organization. And what I've noticed is two things, not only the endurance thing, Erin, but I'm starting to put weight back on. There's a lot of food in between these in-person meetings. So my workout has to start improving here going forward. And it almost feels in some ways like the world has slowed down a little bit. You could jump from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom, having that little bit of time in between a meeting to socialize, and of course, get some great food has now become the norm. So back to the gym and do more talking than eating at these in-person events. That's my advice to everybody.
Oh my God, I love it. I swear this is a little vulnerable right now that at one point, a close friend of mine and my leader, Mike Day, looked over and goes, "Is that your 7th bag of chips?" I'm like, there's chips everywhere. There are chips everywhere. Why are there so many chips? Anyway, Jenny, love to hear from you. And then, of course, you just got back from Italy, so maybe there's a story there too.
So I love those answers. I'm just having a moment of like, man, I really have been eating a lot in the office. I'm just having a moment.
It's horrible.
Self-reflection right there. As everyone said, I'm Jenny Dede. I lead customer success for our talent solutions at LinkedIn. LinkedIn, creating economic opportunity. We're obviously a social platform. And so my team is a global, about 1,100 people. That is CSMs, our technical team, the whole bunch of different teams that roll up into that. So very excited to be here. I would say my biggest shock in coming back to the office, I mean, I think I'm down for karaoke at any time. So I agreed with the endurance thing, but like you put music on and I'm ready to sing. I think I didn't I don't think I realized how much I needed those moments of laughter in the day. Like when you go from Zoom to Zoom, I just didn't laugh enough. And so now I feel like I'm really cherishing those moments of creating laughter when I'm with people. So that's it.
I totally agree. For me, it was, I was telling the panel when we were getting ready for this, it was this weird moment at my first conference where I was like, oh, there's no like mute or like turn off the camera and like take a bite of your sandwich. You're just like, you're in someone's face and you're having to make eye contact the whole time. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I got to get used to this again. But it's been really great. And speaking of that, we can't wait to see all of your faces in person at Pulse. It's going to be such a wonderful event. But with that being said, I think we should get into the topic at hand. Again, one that I am a super nerd over, but really tackling the question of, is the EBR dead? And again, we're going to prove today that it isn't. But I think there is certainly a case to be made here that sometimes it needs a facelift, right? We need to ensure that this ever important strategic meeting is just that, very strategic, ROI filled, and valuable for the customer and also the partnership as a whole, right? So Jenny, I'm going to start with you with a very broad question here, but I think that we can all get very granular as we continue to go. Why do we have EBRs?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question. When we met before, I've been thinking about it. And I think so often it ends up being a check the box exercise, like, oh, I have to go do this, so I'm going to regurgitate everything about ourselves. But I really believe that the EBR is like the greatest moment for connection, for creating some type of, like, usually you go to dinner when they were all in person, before or after, or, have some type of moment to connect, because our relationships are so personal. And so those EBRs are a moment of human connection. I also think it's a great time to learn about the customer. I will tell you, I don't think we have it figured out. I think they're very one-sided. I think our teams like to come with like these big decks of like, hey, this is why LinkedIn is so great. And that does not make for a great EBR. So I think if more of the time is spent actually listening and having some discovery conversations, it's just more beneficial. And then you share some of the value and some of the future focused things about the company. So that to me is why we have them, but human connection coming first.
Yeah, it's such a big piece of it. And you're right, it's shifted so much. We were talking about that before, where it's shifted from this kind of take you out to dinner to now how do we do it in the virtual world? So John, how are you all thinking about EBRs?
Yeah, I agree with just about everything Jenny said. Of course, this is a human point of connection. But QBRs, EBRs are certainly not dead. They are a vital part of your customer interaction. And I think it's also part, to put a process around it, part of your pacing. So, one of the first things that we did, when I jumped on board with VMware about 6 months ago, we noticed over the pandemic, we had moved into a tactical motion with many of our customers where if there was something wrong, we would reach out, or there's a commercial transaction, we would reach out. If there's a new feature or function, we would reach out. And it was very tactical in terms of moving the ball forward. What a QBR or an EBR is an opportunity from a process perspective to sit with your customer, let them know how valuable they are to you, because you're bringing a whole team together and spending the time to talk about them and their outcomes and how you're supporting them, not about your product, not about what you're going to do next. Of course, you can bring that in, I think, to a strategic conversation, which should be part of every QBR, about where a customer is going and how you can help them get there. But for us, it really is part of the process to ensure that there is a customer-focused ROI on the outcome. So from my perspective, they're not dead. They are a vital part of what we do. And in some ways, it's a privilege to have one, because you can't do it for every customer in a way that's big and grand. You got to be very focused on where you do them and how you do them. So.
Oh, I totally agree. We'll get to that later about who gets an EBR, and I think that's a really important question there. Erin, how is Anaplan tackling EBRs or thinking about EBRs? I know you guys think about it a little bit differently.
Yeah. So I mean, everything Jenny and John just said is true. I think one of the interesting things we've done as we have relaunched our EBR, we've always called them QSRs, and QSR stands for Quarterly Success Review. Just as we've rolled out in this, we've just started our new fiscal year back in February, and we've rolled out a framework called FIVE, and it stands for Focus, Innovate, Drive Value, and Engage. And we've done these high five playbooks, like have been really excited to dig in with the team over these last 3 months of what they're doing here. But what's really cool is they dropped off the queue. So we don't call them quarterly anymore because we tier them specifically to where the customer is in the segment. But the real core thing we're trying to drive is to make sure we understand the business imperatives of the customer. We celebrate the successes they've been able to achieve through the outcomes they've driven with Anaplan, and then make that human connection, just like Jenny said, make those customers the hero of that story. And then, of course, share those things that are important to them about what's going on at Anaplan. So, but mostly make it about the customer. That's the big push we're driving.
Yes. Yes. I love all of that. Making it about the customer. Jenny, I know you said the same thing, not just showing slides about, LinkedIn. It's really about what is the value that we've provided you and how can we continue to grow this partnership. I mean, to me, that's the why. We actually have in our prep document here at Gainsight, the first thing in that first page of the prep document, which a lot of times even our CEO looks at, is what's the why behind this meeting for the customer, right? Like, what's their why? Like, why do they want to be here and what's going to get them here and get them coming back to these ever important meetings? So with that in mind, would love to move to, I think, a question that all of us are struggling with right now, which is the fact that CSMs are responsible for so much more. Like, if you look on LinkedIn, Jenny, you'll see so many of, all of you talking about, okay, the CSM can sometimes be the catch-all. They're running all of these different plays, right? The fact that customers require more engagement, more personalized consults, they want to realize value more quickly, right? And they have a number of different providers who are all going as well for that EBR, all knocking on their door. All of those things make it so easy, in my opinion, for CSMs to put the EBR on the back burner and deprioritize it. Because, I have these 400 risks, I have all these other things, right? How do you keep it front and center, both internally and externally? And John, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah. So I alluded to it before, Kate. It's part of our core process. So it can't slide off. QBRs are a culmination of at least 3 monthly meetings. And again, a QBR may slide a little bit in or out depending on a situation with a customer. But it's part of a process or a cadence that's created where on a monthly basis, we're coming together as an account team, meaning sales and CS and any technical support, to really discuss what's going on in the customer and ensuring that the daily conversations we have with that customer are actually resulting in quantifiable progress against an outcome for that customer. So by the time you get to the QBR, or that interaction with the customer, that is, the capstone event on that period of time, it really is all getting down to what it's about them and what they are getting in return from their interactions with you. So from how do you keep attention on this? It's process driven, it's monitored. In other words, we report on how many are getting done and where inside of the company. And it is a culmination of something that ideally is through the customer lens. So it allows you to reach out to the customer in a way that engages them so they want to do it. And then from our perspective, it really is about moving the ball forward, part of the process, and how we incentivize our people.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned something there that I want to double click into, if you don't mind. You said quantifiable progress, which to me screams some sort of success plan, right? Or some sort of plan that you put in place. Similar to the fact that Erin just said that hers used to be called QSRs, like quarterly success review. Are you reviewing that success plan and those quantifiable outcomes during that session?
Absolutely. We have a template in which we go through, and there's actually a component of it that is from Gainsight that gets into that adoption plan. We will walk the customer through it, either through that template and or through Customer Connect, which is our ability to actually show the adoption plan and progress over time and measure you with your peers. So it's not only part of the QBR, but it's part of how we communicate with a customer on a daily basis. And plug for Gainsight, the content and the workflow and the alerting and everything that we do inside of Gainsight is actually part of that process.
Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. Erin, would love to hear how you also keep it front and center, considering all of the other things that our CSMs are kind of juggling on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so very similar to a lot of what John described, but I think one of the other things is to make sure we have go-to-market leadership bought in and the organization aligned on incentives. So the what we call CS business partners in our organization are incented on expand. So as they identify expand opportunities, or their salespeople identify expand opportunities and deliver on those, their incentive comp pays out on that. So what we did was last year, we correlated the 1,600 success reviews we did for our customers last year, not to our customers, with our customers. We saw a 36% higher rate of expansion amongst those customers that had a QSR in that 12-month period. And then of the expands that were done, the customers that had QSRs in that 12-month period had a 37% higher average expand value. So when our go-to-market leadership saw that, very, very excited about really driving success reviews, making sure that we have the participants at the success reviews that are going to be important, like your account executive and your CSVPs, and then your executive sponsors, leaders, SMEs, all those people there too. It's great for getting the commitment.
I mean, because you're using that data to really say, here's why you shouldn't put it on the back burner. You also have the incentives for the CSMs too. So you're saying these actually do equate to, truly making your NRR numbers, come to fruition. I think that's amazing. And I'd love to hear, I'm sure the people on the line here would love to hear a little bit more about how you actually came to those numbers. So you might get some questions after that of how you actually did that rating scale.
Plug for game site again.
Oh, well, that wasn't what I meant to do, but that fit perfectly right there. All right, Jenny, I'd love to hear how you keep it front and center. And I know, Jenny, that there's a lot more, customers that you're handling, so you're segmenting a little bit different than some of the folks on the phone. So we'd love to hear about that too.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a different model. So first of all, our CSMs only cover about 25 to 30% of the customers based on customer size, which I think is pretty common. However, we have a success review and a business review. So the success reviews are owned by the CSMs, and we have a tiered model very similar, I assume, to what Aaron was referencing in the beginning. So not everybody gets one every month. Our larger customers get more, but we co-own value reviews with our sales team for our largest customers. For the rest of the customers, the sales team owns those. And so how we keep them front and center with the ones that we own are really, I would say, very similar to the things that both Aaron and John said about measuring them. We track them, we tie the outcomes to it, because we know if a QBR has been done. The CSMs track the activities, but then we also have downloaded information, which is like all of our insights are in one tool. And so I can say which accounts had that information downloaded, and then I can tie that to the financial outcomes. And they look very similar to Aaron's. So those customers that had a value review, either by sales or CS, have, I would say, very similar outcomes to what Aaron had shared, far greater expansion, growth, retention, all of those metrics.
I love that each of you are tying, I think it's kind of like, it's the gold star, right? You're saying, this is what this motion means to the customer. This is what this motion means to the CSM directly. If I preach anything every single day, it's make sure that the activities that your CSMs are being required to do, or that there are KPIs and metrics, actually result in something. And you guys are putting numbers to it, which is such music to my ears, and I know the entire industry listening. With that being said, though, I have a big question here that I struggle with, and that I put on the chopping block right when I came onto GameSite was, how do you measure what good looks like from a cadence perspective? You can depend that on segment, but my question here really is EBR or QBR? And I'll give you a little insight to GameSite that we had this kind of QBR metric for our enterprise team. And we said, okay, you're going to do quarterly business reviews. Well, it turns out sometimes, sorry if Nick is listening, they can take 3 weeks to a month to prep for. So if you do that, your team is just building EBRs for a living, right? So what we noticed was that at the end of the year, the customers who had 2 with quarterly steer codes, which I think is a lot like your QSRs, were still just as likely to renew. So let's pull back our expectations. I'd love to hear how you all measure yourself on that expectation and continue to check yourself, and what does good look like from a cadence perspective. And maybe we'll start with you, Aaron, this time.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that we used to call them QSRs. Just in this last switchover in fiscal years, we dropped the queue and we started being more prescriptive around, based on the segment the customer sits in, that is how frequently we would be looking for a success review to be delivered. I love what you just said, though, about quarterly steercos.
Yep.
So I think we still have some work to do to make sure that we're not spending an inordinate amount of time preparing for sessions that may not be driving the value that we need them to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my take on it. Still work to do.
Love it. John?
Yeah, good for us. Honestly, we've been at this for a while. And so, and I've joked around before, outcomes. This whole thing has got to be designed around outcomes. And if you're doing it the right way, you're going to get a great result. But how you take some of the lift out of this, as with just about everything in business, if you can templatize what good to great looks like, and you create that as the standard, you can only really go up from there. So for us, every QBR structurally will go the same way unless there's a critical issue at a customer that, overshadows everything and you need to engage in. But you start with confirming the outcomes. Every single CSM in our company needs to know where a customer's trying to go and what they're trying to achieve. Every one of those outcomes has a nested use case or thing that our software or platform is going to do for that customer. So giving a progress update, tracking that for the customer, and then if you can, giving a comparable to where they are versus their peer group to speed them up, slow them down, to give them some type of a concept of how well they're doing with what they've invested in is vital. That's in every QBR we do. Same thing with support and professional services. These are things a customer pays for. So you want to make sure that they realize they're getting their money's worth and they know where those resources are being applied. And this is very important for decision makers. So every QBR has some component of that. And then the last part is strategy. And this is where you get to, freelance it a little bit, which is talking a little bit about more about the market, an industry norm, a trend, how you can help move that customer forward. This is also where we would bring in product experts, third-party experts. I've talked about this before. Sometimes we will bring in a reference customer, usually a customer request, not a standard part of a QBR. But all of it is aligned around, for the next outcome they're trying to do, what is the strategy, how they're trying to get there, and how do you help them get there? So every QBR and in the internal processes that we do, that's how we talk about our accounts. And that at least gives you a bare minimum of what good to great would look like. And we feel you can only go up from that. So that's kind of how we make sure there's a quality control. And lastly, I would say, if you template it and you're using, I'm going to plug Gainsight again. This is almost shameless for you guys, but that's got to be part of the tool. You don't want to create an adoption plan there or a time chart there and then have to recreate it in PowerPoint. So from my perspective, we've done it 3 times, even before we get into the QBR. It's part of how we operate every day. And we use the tooling and templating to make sure that the lift shouldn't be that heavy. And there shouldn't have to be a lot of coordination before that conversation. We're already on the same page.
I don't think you know how much people watching this right now are, salivating over the idea of a template. I get asked all the time, Kate, how do we templatize this important motion and also keep it interesting and keep the customer coming back for more? Are these hour sessions, John? Are they 90 minutes?
It depends on the size of the customer. We've spoken a lot about segmentation, who gets a QBR, who doesn't. For some of our largest customers, it's not uncommon for us to engage with them for 2 hours if we can get it, because there's a deep product discussion that's going on in the strategy phase. But if it's part of the regular cadence and update, we're usually looking for 45 minutes to an hour. We feel that that's appropriate. And maybe there is an hour and a half of prep that has to go into that. It shouldn't be a heavy lift. And that's just each team dropping a little bit of information in and/or grabbing a component or screenshot or data from Gainsight.
Okay, that is, you're speaking the dream right there. I feel like with 2-hour ones with Zoom though, you need like a stretch in the middle or something. Like everybody's like, oh my God, I'm still looking at this screen. Jenny, would love to hear from you. I know, again, it's a little bit different in your world, but how do you evaluate and then reevaluate as you scale this group and this motion?
I mean, so much great stuff has already been talked about. I would say I'm going to go back to the difference between a success review and a value review for us. I feel like being that there's so many different stakeholders at our largest customers, if we can take the operational conversation to like the level, maybe 1 or 2 under who would be joining the executive business review, I think you're in a great spot to give a summary of the operational type of metrics. And then I really loved what John said, and where I'd like to believe all of our conversations are around the forward focus, the roadmap, the product, because like at the end of the day, like I agree, we have a template too that like that we're like it's easily pushed. You push a button and all the metrics come out. We're very lucky to have that. Yeah. But the magic of the EBR is not the slides. It's really the conversation and a lot of the things around the future focus. And so I don't know that I have anything more to add. I thought John's answer was so great with regards to like where the focus of that conversation is, because it's not about like, here's the slide, here's how we performed. We already did that, right? Like we did that in further conversations. Here's the summary. Now let's talk about what business challenges you're trying to solve, and let us tell you how we can help you with that.
I love it, Jenny. And on that note, actually, I see a question come through specifically to you. So if you could elaborate on this a little bit on what is included in your value review versus your success review. And I guess when you mentioned that, we got a little bit of a peak of interest from the audience. If you can
yeah. So our success reviews are like the key day-to-day metrics. And so that is like what we would call like influenced hires, or I mean, I don't know that everybody cares about the LinkedIn core metrics, but like the, you know, like the couple, like the 3 to 5 like core metrics that we measure with our customers. And we would do that. We would share how the customer is doing. And then I like a couple of things John has said a couple of times about the comparison set to competitors. That's a huge part of both of those meetings. So I would say like the daily operating metrics come in a success review. The value review is then around roadmap, future focus. Here is like maybe a little bit about the outcomes, but typically we're talking about like talent flow. So LinkedIn tells a lot to our customers about like, here's where you're getting talent, here's where you're losing talent. So really more a broader talent conversation, something probably about skills-based hiring, more like themes, topics, thought leadership in a value review, not like an education on here's where you point and clicked and, you know, here's the outcome of what you did in a daily basis in our tool. Like that's not EBR material, in my opinion.
It's a genius thing. So I'm going to be a little vulnerable here and say we started to struggle with EBRs because we had, you know, expectations, I think, of, you know, these massive on-site meetings 4 times a year. You know, maybe your enterprise team has 10 to 15 accounts. They're working all over the place. Then COVID hit. And we were struggling, I'm sure as everybody was, to get executives to join these calls. So we very much, Jenny, took a note out of your book, and we did something called the PBR. It's the same thing as an EBR. Some of you have even experienced it. Erin, I know you have, where it's a pulse boardroom where we bring Nick and our CCO Kelly and our leaders in, and we just do thought leadership. We definitely, to be fair, sprinkle in what we need to sprinkle in terms of like, here's where we need to go with the partnership.
Yes, but there's not 12 slides. Not 12 slides on it.
Yes, but I got to be honest, in that moment where we were like, okay, let's kind of do a road show. We didn't have Pulse. We had Pulse everywhere, but we didn't have these on-site events. So we switched it up and people loved it. They loved this idea of you are the thought leader. Bring us the thought leadership and we will show up. In the meantime, here's your CSM and here's the value of utilizing them more. And they were the ones running the show, so they really got to feel like the quarterback. So I love that, Jenny. Speaking of that, what I just mentioned about our CEO coming to these, how do you think about the key members of your account teams and leadership who join the EBRs, and what is their specific role in the sessions? Jenny, I know you touched a little bit on how you always have sales there and sometimes sales leads. John, I would love to hear, how you look at it. Do you bring senior leadership? Do you bring sales?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the carrot to get, the customer to want to engage. So, first and foremost, again, depending on segment, you may have officer level attendees, and we expect the same from the customer. And usually when you show up with one of your senior product leaders, sales leaders, and/or customer success leaders, the customer almost always reciprocates. So that's a good forcing function. And again, we look at it by segment. The top ones will have that engagement. Some of the smaller accounts, depending again on scenario, we'll have VP, senior director level, but it's always designed according to the scale and scope and how we actually look at the customer and what we need to drive with that customer. And lastly, I think there's two very key things in terms of who shows up at these things. Sales is always involved before, during, and after. We work with and support them and their activity with the customer, not necessarily the other way around. And I would say when we have stakeholders inside of the customer that are the champions or, the senior super users or admins of platforming capability, we always make sure that the content that goes into that's available to them and it's a high point for them. Or if they have an issue or something that they want us to talk to specifically in front of their leadership, that we include that in the template and part of the conversation. And that way they have the incentive to also pull their senior leaders forward. So it's a carrot approach to in terms of who you show up with based on segmentation, topically having the customer pull the person through, and that usually gets you the right type of participation. And I know at VMware, I'm assuming, with my peers here, it's the same thing. We want to be in front of customers at all times. So it's never an issue trying to get a senior executive or product specialist to come in and chat with a customer during a QBR.
Yeah, instead of going around the horn on this one, because I think that you really just nailed it, John, I would love to hear anybody surprising that we might not think of that comes to your sessions, Jenny or Erin.
For us, it's a little bit dependent on where the customer is in their journey. If they're in the middle of deploying additional use cases, because we're a partner deployed solution, we may have members of the customer's deployment partner at these meetings as well, because they can give a real firsthand view of what's going on with the deployment. We also have an advisory group, so depending on what we might know around challenges the customer has expressed that they're having or we've observed that they're having, we may have members of our advisory team come and talk through some thought leadership also.
I love that. We actually we've brought other customers to calls, to EBRs, specifically when you hear things like, hey, we'd really like to hear about what our competitors are doing. Now, generally, you're not bringing competitors, but you are bringing other thought leaders in the industry who are utilizing maybe a piece of the product really well or doing something really well that this customer wants to do. And we almost do it like a panel, like we're doing today. And we find that those are super strong. And when peers hear from each other, it's wild to see those light bulb moments, because you're like, well, I've been telling you that all along, but somehow when this person told you, it was way, way better than when I told you. Jenny, you said sales leads for the smaller customers. And is that a very similar session, or is it just the sales rep? Do they bring other people?
It's typically the salesperson. I mean, we have, tens of thousands of customers. Yep. So it's such a unique situation. So I mean, in past lives, we've had these really wonderful, like all these sessions that you guys are talking about where like product can go and multiple people can come. For our smaller customers, it's really the rep that is having the conversation. Maybe their manager comes. But for our scaled segments, we typically are not having a full core press, which is unfortunate, but
I think that's okay. We're going to have to figure out for digital segments and for scaled segments across the industry how we do this. Is it a TikTok way of doing it? Is it a 3-minute video because that's the way people consume data? I don't know, but we're going to have to figure it out because we know that it's so important.
And so many of our small customers, just as a moment, they don't have time. Right? They're playing so many different roles. So to come and sit an hour with us, they're not even ready to digest thought leadership or anything future focused. So like sometimes just like we need to do a better job of like automating a one-sheeter. I love the idea of a TikTok or a video, like watch this and like move on. I think that's great because like I would say until we get to like mid-market, that's really what those customers need. They don't want the pomp and circumstance of what we would consider a real EBR.
100%. Yeah. And they've got all those other CSMs, like we said in the beginning, also knocking on their door. So if you can provide an efficient way to do it, you're automatically becoming somebody who's listening to their concerns and needs because they've already told you they don't have time for it. So let me provide it to you in a way that you do have time for. I love this question, and I know this definitely sparked some conversation when we were meeting previously before this session. But do you assign a portion of the EBR content or presentation to the customer? And I will start by saying, in that prep doc that I mentioned at the beginning, where Nick and myself and other leaders are looking at kind of what's the why behind the meeting. Right next to that is, what are you making the customer present? I mean, they don't necessarily have to be the ones sharing the screen and taking over, but man, if I haven't been the most impressed with CSMs on my team who can get the customer to say, these are the wins that we've had with Gainsight, and these are the opportunities to do better. All of a sudden, they're taking the ownership, and it's an absolutely beautiful thing. I would love to hear how you all think about that, do that, might do that in the future. So Erin, I'll start with you.
Okay, everything you just said is so incredibly true. We actually start with co-creating the agenda for the QSR. So while we have a template as well, we make sure that we meet with the customer in advance and say, these are the things we're thinking about presenting, and making sure that everything that is interesting to them is included there, and that there's nothing that's going to be surprising. But some of our really most successful customers have a center of excellence that's focused on Anaplan. They are the ones responsible for deploying and maintaining the connected planning solution. And we, whenever we have a COE present, we always want them to do exactly what you just said. Present on the successes that they've had, present on the opportunities that they have. Oftentimes, they're also identifying opportunities to connect other parts of the business. So they're kind of setting the stage for the expand conversation for us. And the added bonus is, because they want to showcase what they've done, is that oftentimes their executives, they'll get their executives there, so that that way we know that we have champions and economic buyers in the room.
I love that. That one of the questions that just came through, I can double click on that, Erin, was how are you getting customers to share and really open up during the conversation? And I think the answer is, when you're having them take some responsibility for some of the content and they're the ones pushing a little bit of it, that's when you'll see everybody else in the room opening up as well, when they see that their peer, their counterpart, is also invested.
100%, yeah.
John, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, this is why I like doing these panels, because this is something we weren't really thinking about at VMware. What do you, because we always socialize it up front and it's part of the normal process, there's a lot of input that comes in from the customer, but we've never done it as a homework assignment. And what I've noticed for us, it's always been, and I guess I shouldn't even categorize it like that, is what is your contribution to the meeting? In most cases, we're finding the customer wants to add stuff in because they know there might be 2 or 3 levels of their management there and present in the meeting. So they see it as an opportunity to either get us to do something that they want or to show off something that they've done. So, I think as we, coming out of this panel, I think actually thinking about a standardized or customer contribution to this meeting outside of what we would consider our standardized inputs is actually something we should be doing too. So again, I think that's going to be a lesson learned that we pick up from this panel as well, of what is it that we always want to see a customer bring in, and how to get their ownership into it outside of VMware go fix something for us or do something for us, or things are great, thank you so much, and I'm a superhero for bringing VMware in. You're going to get one of those.
Yep. You love those. Those are the best EBRs right there. Jenny.
I would say I loved all the things that Erin said, and my favorite one is around the co-creation of the agenda. I think the most valuable ones, there's some level of co-creation. I know we don't ask people to present, but we spent a lot of time coaching CSMs and sales on discovery. So what are the key questions to ask, and how do we get our customers talking? And so that's probably where we focused, is what part, how good can we be in uncovering business, our customers' business objectives in the front. That's, I would say, where we're asking, but it's not homework, but it's definitely more to get them talking based on questions.
Yeah, it is. It's all about, for me, that agenda, that prep with the customer. Some of our best customers will see, the operations team or the COE, like Erin said, they're really the ones that helping us prep. And every once in a while, you'll get a senior leader saying, okay, this is what I need to see during this presentation because I have other executives on the line. Here's how you can help me, really drive this home. And those are the best conversations. Before we close out with my last question, I do want to hear from all of you on areas of development, because listen, customer success, we all know, is the newest tech industry that we've had, and it is something that is constantly iterating. I would love to hear what some of your own areas of development are when it comes to the EBR moving into this next fiscal year, if you wouldn't mind getting a little vulnerable. And John, I'll start with you.
Yeah, for us, I really would like it to be more about bringing telemetry into the conversation. We'll talk a lot about outcomes, ROI, financials, delivery timelines and horizons. And I think that is a vital part of that conversation, and it's probably most of it. But I think there's also some value to when you drop into the telemetry of how a customer is using certain aspects of what they've purchased and where they're trying to extract value, and giving them feedback either at a business unit, product, regional level as to how are they performing across the board with your software platform or service. I think that's something that I would love to see us do a much better job. We're looking at it internally all the time. How we actually wrap that up in the conversation with the customer to give them ideas to help move them forward is something I personally, and I'd love to see our team doing more as our product advances and we get into more product-led growth, which is, I know, where everybody's trying to get to with their software capabilities.
Yes, you said the magic 3 letters, the PLG, the product-led growth, and really helping customers realize that. Erin, would love to hear from you.
So similar to Jenny, we're looking for a really good way to deliver at scale success reviews. And so we're in the process right now of assessing a video platform that isn't TikTok to help us deliver personalized feeling success reviews at scale for our customers that are in the lower tiers of our segmentation model. That and really moving more towards an outcomes conversation. John said earlier, outcomes. Mm-hmm. And right now, I think we're really good at telling the customer how much they're using our platform, but I don't think we're where we need to be as far as helping the customer understand why they want to use our platform, why they want to use more of our platform.
Yeah, such a big focus for us with value realization and coming to the table with a program that says, instead of us just reactively collecting from you what's gone well, we're going to prescriptively say, here's exactly what can go well if you run these steps and you do these things. And we're going to show you EBR after EBR, how we are being your partner and getting you there. I totally agree. It's that value piece, it's that outcomes piece, and it's making sure that when they come to that EBR, they're learning something new about those outcomes that they're getting. And then Jenny, I'd love to hear your area of development for 2022 and beyond.
I have a lot, but a strong agree to Erin's, and I'm going to message you for the video platform because I want to hear all about that. But to be honest, I think the biggest area of development is convincing sales that they're important, that EBR is important. Because if a customer is happy, usage looks good, they've renewed. We also have, we've moved to enterprise agreements, so a multi-year plans where a customer can have all of our products that they want. And so the rep is like, there's no additional revenue play there. So like, I don't want to spend time on that. And so like really doubling down to what Erin said at the beginning, right? Of like, look at the customers that had these continual business reviews, look at the financial gain in 3 years, like be more forward focused than just what's going on this quarter with your book. So like that partnership with sales is like the key journey that we're going to be focused on this upcoming year, because like where the math on the frequency and quality of the EBRs where a CSM is involved versus those where it's not is like sad. I can't even think of a better word. It is like grossly disappointing. So it's something that we're definitely focused on and moving into next year.
Oh, I love that. I think making sure that everybody's on board with the value of these is so important. It's so important. To finish out in the last minute, I think that we've proven that EBRs are not dead. If anything, what I think we've said today is that it can be your biggest driver of a relationship. It can be your biggest driver of momentum, growth, but also just feeling like a true partner and not a vendor. God, if I don't love a good EBR, if I don't walk out of an EBR and say like, that's not a reason to celebrate with, some ice cream and a glass of wine wherever I'm at. Like, I absolutely love them, and I think that they are so integral. If you had one piece of advice for all the CSMs listening, maybe just a sentence on the importance of the EBR, what they need to focus on with an EBR, what would that be? And I'll start with John, we'll go to Erin, and I'll let Jenny finish it out.
I'm always going to sound like a broken record on this one. I go back to customer lens. It's customer first. It's in this little wheel that's behind me. It's all built around the customer. And when you talk to a customer, what are they trying to accomplish? That's what matters. And if you put that at the center of everything you're doing, and it's outcome, and how I'm getting you to get there, and do we believe what the output is together as a partnership, everything else that comes after that just works. And it's really the truth. So I hate to end it the way I started it.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Stay with that,
okay.
CSMs, and you will have a happy customer.
I love it. Erin.
Prepare.
Love it. Jenny, to finish it out.
70% of our customers tell us that they buy us because of the account, or they stay with us because of the account team, like the relationship with the account team. How the account team is built in that relationship is in the EBR. And so if you take it as a to-do, like a check the box, you'll never build a real connection. So I agree with both Erin and John, and say on top of that, that's where you sell yourself beyond just the product.
Yeah.
God, I love it. This has been so wonderfully fantastic. We have proven that the EBR is not dead. I know there will be a lot of questions for all of you. I'm sure I didn't get to any of them. We'll head back to DJ schematics, but I can't thank the three of you enough. Super honored to be sharing the screen with you today, and can't wait to see you in future EBRs.
Great to be with all of you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.